Bruce Lee, young, fearless, and already building the reputation of a martial arts genius, standing across from a seasoned Kung Fu Grandmaster whose skill had been tested for decades. This was not just another sparring match, this was a moment where generations collided, where old traditions faced the fire of new ideas, and where Bruce Lee had to prove that his philosophy and speed could measure up to someone who had dedicated his entire life to preserving the ancient ways of Kung Fu. This is the story of when Bruce Lee took on a Kung Fu Grandmaster, a story filled with tension, respect, and lessons that changed martial arts forever. Bruce Lee's relentless search for truth in martial arts. Before we dive into the legendary encounter, we need to understand what Bruce Lee stood for as a martial artist. To Bruce, martial arts were never about memorizing forms, nor about simply obeying tradition. He famously rejected the idea of sticking rigidly to one system. Instead, he believed in practicality, efficiency, and directness. This philosophy led him to challenge not just opponents in the ring, but the very traditions that had been honored for centuries. He studied Wing Chun under Ip Man, absorbed the principles of boxing, fencing, and wrestling, and blended them all into what would eventually become his art, Jeet Kune Do. But during this time, there were traditional masters who believed Bruce was straying too far from the roots of Chinese Kung Fu. To them, he was a rebel, disrespecting the art by mixing it with foreign styles. This created tension that would eventually lead Bruce Lee into direct confrontation with one such Kung Fu Grandmaster. The Grandmaster's challenge, tradition versus innovation. The Grandmaster Bruce faced was not just an ordinary teacher, he was a living symbol of Kung Fu tradition, carrying the weight of centuries of practice and discipline. Grandmasters like him believed martial arts were more than just fighting. They were a way of life, a form of culture and philosophy. To them, Bruce's approach was almost offensive, because it stripped away the ritual and left only what was practical in a fight. When word spread that Bruce Lee was teaching non-Chinese students and openly criticizing classical Kung Fu as being too rigid, many traditionalists took issue. It wasn't just about fighting, it was about honor, about cultural pride, and about preserving an art form they had sworn to protect. So when the Grandmaster agreed to face Bruce, it wasn't seen as just sparring, it was almost like a trial. Could Bruce Lee's modern, efficient, no-nonsense style hold its own against the deep-rooted wisdom and experience of a Kung Fu master who had trained for decades in forms passed down for generations? The atmosphere of the encounter. Picture the scene, a private setting, no cameras, no YouTube, no viral clips, just two martial artists facing each other with a small group of witnesses. On one side stood Bruce Lee, explosive, fast, and brimming with